The colony of New Haven had always been a quiet place, nestled on the edge of known space like a candle flickering in the dark. It was home to just over 200,000 people, farmers, engineers, teachers, children who played in domed parks under artificial skies. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and blooming hydroponic flowers. Every morning the sun rose over the jagged eastern ridge, casting long shadows across solar farms and schoolyards. Life was simple, steady, and safe. Or so everyone believed. On the morning of Sol 217, year 42 of the United Earth expansion, nothing seemed out of place. Mayor Carl Dawson sipped his coffee on the balcony of his modest home, watching cargo shuttles glide toward the orbital dock. His daughter, Lila, waved from the garden below, holding up a ripe tomato from their personal plot. He smiled. It was just another day. But by midday, the sky turned wrong. First came the silence. All comms traffic from orbit cut out at once. Then the emergency sirens, low, mournful wails that hadn't sounded since the colony's founding drills. People stepped outside, confused, shielding their eyes against the sun. High above, the stars began to blink out, not one by one, but in clusters, as if something vast was passing between them and New Haven. No one saw the ships. Not really. They moved too fast, too smooth, like thoughts given shape. What witnesses later described, if they survived long enough to speak, was a shimmer, a ripple in the air, followed by a light so bright it burned shadows into the ground. Then came the fire. It started at the orbital station. One moment it was there, a silver ring humming with life. The next it dissolved into vapor. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Then the beams struck the surface. Not missiles, not plasma, but beams of pure entropy, unraveling matter at the atomic level. Buildings didn't collapse. They unmade themselves, turning to fine gray dust that drifted on the wind like snow. Carl Dawson ran toward the school. He never made it. Halfway there, the street beneath him softened, then vanished. He fell through nothingness, his last thought of Lila's tomato, still clutched in her small hand. Within 43 minutes, New Haven ceased to exist. No distress call reached Earth. The colony's main transmitter was erased in the first wave. But deep in the asteroid belt, a long-range monitoring buoy meant only to track solar flares caught something strange. A spike in gamma radiation, followed by a total absence of thermal signatures where a thriving world should have glowed. The buoy sent its data packet on a tight beam burst toward Sol. It took 17 days to arrive. On Earth, it was a rainy Tuesday in Geneva. President Daniel Hayes was reviewing agricultural quotas for Mars when his aide burst into the Oval Office, pale and breathless. The president read the report once, then again, his knuckles white around the datapad. He didn't speak for a full minute. Outside, rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. "Confirm it," he finally said. "Every channel. Every sensor. I want proof this isn't a glitch." Over the next 12 hours, confirmation came from 3 independent sources: the Lunar Deep Space Array, the Jovian Relay Net, and a civilian freighter that had passed near New Haven's sector 2 weeks prior. All agreed. New Haven was gone. Not damaged, not attacked in the traditional sense. Erased. As if it had never been. In the underground war room beneath Geneva, cold, windowless, lit by the soft blue glow of holographic star maps, Admiral Lena Cruz stood before the assembled council. She was 52, with sharp eyes and a voice that rarely rose above a calm murmur. But today, her words carried the weight of stone. "They didn't just kill our people," she said. "They deleted them. No bodies, no wreckage, no chance to mourn properly. Whoever did this doesn't see us as enemies. They see us as noise to be silenced." The room was silent. Around the table sat generals, diplomats, scientists, men and women who had guided humanity through wars, plagues, and the quiet terror of first contact. But this was different. This was annihilation without reason, without warning, without even the courtesy of a declaration. President Hayes entered then, his coat still damp from the rain. He didn't sit. He walked to the center of the room where a glowing red dot marked New Haven's former coordinates. "We have 2 choices," he said. "We can hide. We can pull back our colonies, build walls, hope they don't notice us again, or we can show them what happens when you erase a human world." He looked at Admiral Cruz. "How long to mobilize the full fleet?" "Full fleet?" one of the generals asked, stunned. "Sir, that's over 500,000 ships. It's never been done. It's being done now, Hayes replied. I want every battlecruiser, every destroyer, every support vessel from Sol to Proxima ready to jump within 72 hours. If they think we're weak, we'll show them strength. If they think we're alone, we'll show them unity. And if they think we'll forget, we'll remind them. Admiral Cruz nodded. It will be done. Within the hour, the order went out. Across the solar system, shipyards roared to life. In orbit around Mars, construction drones swarmed over half-finished hulls, welding armor plates at triple speed. On Titan, fuel depots opened their valves, pumping liquid hydrogen into waiting tankers. In the ship graveyards of Neptune's rings, mothballed vessels powered up for the first time in decades, their reactors humming like waking giants. Commander Paul Grant was on leave in Buenos Aires when the alert came. He'd been teaching navigation tactics at the academy, enjoying the rare peace of civilian life. But the moment his Riscom buzzed with Priority Alpha, he knew. He kissed his sleeping wife on the forehead, packed a single bag, and walked out into the rain. By dawn, he was aboard a shuttle to Luna Fleet Command. Lieutenant Mara Ellis was calibrating deep space sensors on the research station, Voyager's Hope, when the news arrived. She'd grown up on a colony not unlike New Haven. Her hands shook as she reran the data, searching for any clue, any pattern, that might explain what happened. She found none, only silence where voices should have been. Back on Earth, President Hayes stood alone in his office long after midnight. On his desk lay a photo from New Haven's last public broadcast. Children planting trees in the central plaza, laughing under a sky they would never see again. He touched the image gently, then turned to the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the rain. 500,000 ships, he whispered, for 200,000 souls. And so it began. Not with a battle cry, but with a promise. Humanity would not vanish quietly. It would not be forgotten. It would rise, not in rage, but in remembrance, and fill the stars with its presence until the darkness itself had to take notice. The fleet would gather. The void would tremble. And somewhere in the cold between worlds, the ones who thought they could erase humanity would learn a simple truth. Humans do not go gently. They return, they rebuild, and when wronged, they come in numbers that blot out the stars. Months passed as the Armada gathered beyond the Kuiper Belt, a sea of steel and plasma engines stretching across light minutes. The scale of it defied imagination. 500,000 warships of every class, from nimble scouts to city-sized command carriers, all aligned in silent formation. Their hulls gleamed under the distant sun, their engines idling in readiness. This was no ordinary fleet. It was humanity's answer to silence, its fist clenched in the dark. Among the captains was Commander Paul Grant, a man who had seen war before but never like this. He stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser, Aurora's Edge, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. His ship was one of the newer models built for endurance and firepower, but even it felt small in this ocean of metal. Paul had fought in the Titan border skirmishes years ago, back when conflicts were about resources and territory. This was different. There was no enemy flag to target, no treaty to break. Only a question hanging in the void: who did this? And why? He didn't like the size of the mission. 500,000 ships was overkill by any military doctrine he knew. It screamed desperation, not strategy. But then he remembered the footage from New Haven's last moments, the way the schoolyard turned to dust, the way the comms went dead without a single scream. That wasn't war. That was erasure. And for that, maybe overkill was the only language left. On the flagship Odyssey, deep in the heart of the fleet, Lieutenant Mara Ellis worked through another sleepless shift. She was young, barely 30, with tired eyes and a mind that never stopped asking questions. Officially, she was a comms officer. Unofficially, she was the fleet's only xenolinguist with field experience. While others prepared weapons, she listened, to static, to echoes, to the faint hum of space itself. Days ago, she had rerouted a passive sensor array to scan the New Haven sector from long range. What she found made no sense. Buried beneath layers of cosmic background noise was a repeating energy signature, subtle, rhythmic, almost musical. It wasn't human. It wasn't random. And it wasn't a weapon. It felt like a memory. She brought her findings to her superior, Captain Ruiz, a no-nonsense veteran who trusted data more than hunches. At first, he dismissed it as sensor ghosting. But when Mara showed him the harmonic resonance patterns, how they matched no known propulsion or communication system, he grew quiet. "Run it again," he said. "And don't tell anyone else yet." Mara did. And the signal held. Worse, it was fading, as if whatever had left. It was retreating or dying. One evening, during a rare comms window between ships, Paul received a private message. It was from Mara. They'd never met, but their paths had crossed in fleet briefings years ago. She kept it short. "I think they didn't just destroy New Haven. They took something. Or tried to save something. The energy traces suggest harvesting, not of matter, but of data. Maybe even consciousness." Paul read the message 3 times. He wanted to laugh. Harvesting souls? That sounded like old Earth myths. But then he thought of the clean destruction. No debris, no radiation bloom, just absence. What if it wasn't an attack? What if it was a quarantine? He typed back, "Keep digging. But be careful. If Command thinks you're chasing ghosts, they'll ground you." "I already am," she replied. "But ghosts are all we have left of New Haven." As the fleet moved deeper into uncharted space, discipline held, but tension grew. Crews trained endlessly, ran drills, checked systems, yet there was little to fight. No enemy appeared, no signals hailed them. The stars remained indifferent. Some soldiers began to whisper that they were chasing a phantom, that New Haven had been lost to some natural cosmic event, a rogue black hole, a quantum collapse. But Paul knew better. Natural disasters didn't leave mathematical precision in their wake. Only intelligence did. Mara spent her off hours cross-referencing ancient alien contact logs, even digging into pre-expansion myths. She found a curious pattern. Every known intelligent species that had encountered total planetary erasure described it the same way. Not as violence, but as cleansing. As if something too dangerous had been contained and the container had broken. She began to suspect New Haven hadn't been the target. It had been the lid. One night, unable to sleep, she accessed the colony's final geological survey. Buried in the raw data was an anomaly, a deep-crust energy well stable for millennia, that spiked wildly in the hours before the attack. It wasn't tectonic. It wasn't artificial. It pulsed like a heartbeat. She sent the file to Paul with a single line. "What if we built our city on top of a tomb?" He didn't reply for hours. When he did, it was just, "Meet me on the Odyssey when we reach the rally point. I'll pull strings." The fleet's destination was Rally Point Theta, a neutral zone just outside the New Haven system. From there, they would make their final jump. As the ships gathered into tighter formation, Paul requested a transfer shuttle. His request was denied twice. Command wanted all captains at their posts. But he used an old favor from Admiral Cruz herself, and soon he was aboard a fast courier ship, streaking toward the Odyssey. When he stepped onto the flagship's deck, Mara was waiting. She was smaller than he expected, with short dark hair and eyes that looked older than her years. They shook hands, no ceremony. "You really think there's something down there?" he asked. "I think we're missing the point," she said. "Everyone's looking for the hand that struck us. But what if the hand was trying to stop something worse?" Before he could answer, the ship's alert system chimed softly. Not red alert, not yellow, just a low pulse, unusual energy readings from the New Haven direction. Both turned toward the main view screen. Space rippled, not like a warp jump, not like a solar flare. It was as if reality itself folded just for a second. Then silence returned, but Mara's console lit up. The same signal, stronger now, clearer. And this time it carried a shape. Not words, but a symbol. A circle broken by a single line. "It's a warning," she whispered. Paul felt a chill, or a marker. Back on his ship hours later, he filed a routine report. Nothing unusual, all systems green. But in a hidden layer of the transmission, he embedded Mara's findings. He didn't know who would see it. He only knew that if the fleet charged in blind, they might not just lose another battle. They might wake something that should have stayed buried. The Armada pressed on, 500,000 ships moving as one, unaware that the truth wasn't waiting in the stars ahead, but beneath the ashes they were about to revisit. And the real enemy might not be the one who destroyed New Haven, but what New Haven had been built to hide. The fleet arrived at the ruins of New Haven in perfect silence. No fanfare, no battle horns, just 500,000 ships sliding out of warp into a graveyard of dust and memory. The planet below was a pale gray sphere, Its oceans boiled away, its continents smoothed into featureless plains. Scans showed no life, no structures, not even a single piece of recognizable debris. It was as if time itself had been scrubbed clean. Commander Paul Grant stood on the bridge of the Aurora's edge, watching the main display. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. He had read Mara's latest report twice. The energy echoes weren't just signals, they were echoes of containment fields now shattered. Something had been locked beneath the crust, and human mining drills had cracked the seal. Admiral Cruz ordered a full sensor sweep. Every ship in the fleet activated its deep-range arrays, painting the system in invisible light. For hours, nothing unusual appeared. Then, from the planet's core, a faint pulse, slow, rhythmic, like a sleeping heart. It matched the symbol Mara had decoded. A circle broken by a line. Warning, breach, danger. Before anyone could react, space twisted. It wasn't a warp jump. It was smoother, quieter, as if the stars themselves stepped aside. From the distortion emerged ships, dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands. They were black as void, shaped like curved blades or folded paper, moving without engine trails or emissions. They made no sound, sent no signals. They simply appeared, surrounding the human fleet in a perfect sphere. Paul's tactical officer gasped. "They're inside our defensive perimeter." How no one answered. Because in the next second, the enemy fired. Beams of silver light lanced out, not at hulls, but at the space between ships. Where they struck, reality flickered. Shields failed not from overload, but from unraveling. A frigate 20 kilometers away simply folded in on itself, its atoms scrambling into nonsense before vanishing. No explosion, no debris. "Just gone. Return fire." Admiral Cruz's voice boomed across the fleet net. Human weapons roared to life. Railguns spat tungsten slugs. Plasma cannons melted vacuum. But the enemy ships shifted, microseconds before impact, sliding through predicted trajectories like ghosts. Their movements weren't random. They were precise, mathematical, as if they knew every human tactic before it happened. Paul barked orders. "Evasive pattern Delta. Redirect power to aft shields." "Mara, are you reading this?" On the Odyssey, Lieutenant Mara Ellis was already working. She had patched into the fleet's sensor net, filtering the enemy's weapon harmonics through her translation matrix. What she found stunned her. The beams weren't just energy. They carried data, complex, sorrowful, repeating. It wasn't a language of war. It was a lament. "They're not attacking us," she whispered into the comm. "They're mourning." Paul didn't have time to process that. His ship shuddered as a near-miss warped local gravity. Alarms blared. Port thrusters damaged. Hull integrity at 82%. "Then give them something to predict," Paul said. He turned to his helm officer. "Fly like a rookie, erratic, untrained, break every rule." The pilot hesitated, then grinned. He yanked the controls hard left, then spun the ship in a clumsy barrel roll, something no trained pilot would do in combat. For a split second, the enemy's next shot missed by meters. Paul saw it. A lag, a tiny delay between their prediction and reality when faced with true chaos. "Tell the fleet," he said. "Scatter. No formations. No patterns. Act like panicked civilians." The order spread. Human ships broke ranks, flying wild, colliding with each other's exhaust trails, spinning, diving, climbing without logic. The enemy formation faltered. Their perfect symmetry cracked. For the first time, their beams began to miss. In that window, Mara found something else. Buried in the lament was a second layer, a map. Not of stars, but of frequencies. A sequence of tones that, when played in reverse, created a stabilizing resonance. She sent it to Paul. "If we broadcast this on all comms channels, it might disrupt their phase alignment." "Do it," he said. The Odyssey transmitted the tone. At first, nothing happened. Then, across the battlefield, the enemy ships flickered. Their movements stuttered. One veered off course and collided with another, both dissolving into shimmering mist. It wasn't victory. But it was a pause. Admiral Cruz seized the moment. "All ships, hold fire." Repeat, "hold fire." Silence fell. The enemy stopped too, hovering like statues. In the quiet, Mara boosted the signal, weaving human voices into the tone. Recordings from New Haven's final hours. Children laughing, teachers reading, farmers singing old songs. She didn't know if they'd understand. But grief, she hoped, was universal. One of the black ships drifted forward. Smaller than the others, it pulsed with soft blue light along its edges. A single beam extended, Not a weapon, but a narrow corridor of stable space. It pointed toward the Odyssey. "They want to talk," Paul said. Mara didn't hesitate. "I'm going." "No," Paul said. "I'll go with you." They boarded a shuttle, unarmed, no shields, just two humans floating toward the unknown. As they neared the alien vessel, its surface rippled open, forming a smooth docking bay. Inside, the air was cool, the walls alive with shifting light. A figure waited, tall, slender, with skin like polished obsidian, and eyes that held galaxies. It didn't speak, but images filled their minds, not words but feelings. A planet long ago teeming with life, a discovery deep underground, a being of pure thought, ancient and kind but unstable. It fed on memory, on experience, and in its hunger it unraveled time. Civilizations rose, touched it, and vanished from history as if they never were. The aliens, the Vathari, had sealed it away, built a tomb, placed markers, warned all who came near. Then humans arrived. They saw only rich soil, clean water, open sky. They built homes on the grave. The Vathari watched. They tried to warn, but human comms didn't understand their symbols, so when the seal cracked, they acted, not out of hate but duty. They erased New Haven to stop the horror from waking. Mara wept. Paul stood frozen, the weight of it crushing him. They hadn't been victims of war. They had been casualties of mercy. The Vathari leader, Mara sensed its name as Kalen, showed them one last image, the core of New Haven, now pulsing with chaotic energy. The archive, the being, was stirring, and if it fully woke, it wouldn't just erase worlds, it would unwrite them from the past. Paul looked at Mara. "We have to help them." She nodded. "We built on their tomb. Now we help them close it." Back on the Odyssey, they reported everything. Admiral Cruz listened in silence. Then she made a call that would change history. "Stand down. All ships. This is not our enemy." The fleet held its breath. The Vathari ships lowered their weapons. For the first time since New Haven fell, there was no fire in the sky. But the real work was just beginning. The horror beneath the planet was still waking, and stopping it would take more than weapons. It would take sacrifice, trust, and a kind of courage neither species had shown before. Paul and Mara knew what had to be done. They would go down into the dark, not to fight but to listen, to remember, and if needed, to seal the tomb once more, even if it cost them everything. Instead of war, humanity offered silence. The 500,000 ships held position, weapons cold, engines idling. No one fired. No one moved. In the void between fleets, a fragile understanding grew, not spoken but felt. The Vathari had not come to conquer. They had come to contain. And now, they needed help. Commander Paul Grant and Lieutenant Mara Ellis stood in the briefing room of the Odyssey, facing Admiral Cruz and Kalen, the Vathari emissary. Kalen did not speak with sound. Images, emotions, and concepts flowed directly into their minds, clear as thought. Through this link, they learned the full truth. The being beneath New Haven was not evil. It was a living archive, ancient, lonely, and dangerous only because it could not control its own nature. It remembered every civilization that had ever touched it, but in remembering it pulled them out of time, as if they had never existed. The Vathari had sealed it away millennia ago, not to destroy it, but to protect the universe from accidental erasure. Human terraforming drills had cracked the containment field. New Haven's destruction had been a desperate act to prevent the archive from fully awakening. But the seal was broken. Now the archive stirred, its thoughts bleeding into reality, warping space and time around the planet's core. "We must rebuild the seal," Kalen conveyed, not with words but with the image of interlocking rings of light. "But your ships lack the resonance frequency. Ours are damaged from the long watch." Mara leaned forward. "What if we combine our systems? Human energy matrices with Vathari phase harmonics?" Paul added. "We have 500,000 power cores out there. Enough to light a star." Admiral Cruz studied them both. She had spent her life preparing for war, not collaboration. But she saw no other path. "Do it," she said. "But if this goes wrong, we lose more than a planet. We lose history itself." Preparations began at once. Engineers from both species worked side by side in orbit, linking human reactors to Vathari crystalline conduits. Mara translated not just language but intent, helping human technicians understand that the Vathari didn't build machines, they grew them from memory-infused minerals. Paul coordinated ship placements forming a ring around the planet, each vessel tuned to a specific harmonic node. But the archive was growing stronger. Strange effects appeared. On the Aurora's edge, a crewman vanished for 3 seconds, then reappeared holding a flower that didn't exist in any known species. On the Odyssey, clocks ran backward for an hour. Time itself was fraying. "We don't have days," Mara said. "Maybe hours." Paul made a decision. "We go down there. To the source." "No," Admiral Cruz said. "It's suicide." "It's the only way to calibrate the seal from the inside," Paul replied. "The archive responds to consciousness. If we stand before it, maybe we can show it that not all memory is pain." Mara agreed. "It's lonely. It just wants to be remembered without destroying." Kalen stepped forward. "I will go with you. The archive knows my people's sorrow, but it has never known human hope." They boarded a reinforced shuttle shielded with layers of Vathari light weave and human neutronium. As they descended through the gray clouds of the dead world, the planet felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, as if holding its breath. The surface was smooth, featureless, but beneath it, something pulsed like a slow heartbeat. They landed near the old colony's center, where the school, the farms, the homes once stood. Now only dust remained. A circular hatch opened in the ground, not built by human or Vathari hands, but formed from the planet itself. It glowed faintly inviting. Inside, the air shimmered. Gravity shifted. Walls of stone flowed like water. They walked for what felt like miles, though their sensors said they'd moved only meters. Time bent around them. Paul saw flashes, a child running, a woman singing, a dog barking, all echoes of New Haven, trapped in the archive's dream. At the heart of the planet, they found it. Not a monster. Not a machine. A sphere of soft light floating in a cavern of crystal. Within it, faces swirled. Thousands, millions, smiling, crying, speaking in forgotten tongues. It saw them, and in that moment it reached out. Mara gasped as memories flooded her mind, not hers, but others. A poet from a world erased 10,000 years ago. A farmer who watched his son go dark. A child who never grew up. The archive wasn't stealing. It was preserving. But in its love for memory, it consumed the present. "We're not here to fight you," Mara thought, sending the idea as clearly as she could. "We're here to help you rest." The light dimmed slightly. Curiosity replaced hunger. Paul stepped forward. "You don't have to hold them all. We will remember for you." He projected images, Earth's libraries, digital archives, oral histories passed from parent to child. Humanity's way of honoring the past without being trapped by it. Kalen added their own memories, the Vathari songs of lost stars, the rituals of remembrance that did not require possession. The archive pulsed slower now, sad but calm. Then it showed them the final truth. To seal it properly, someone had to stay, not as a prisoner, but as a bridge, a living mind to anchor the loop, to remind the archive that it was loved, but not needed to hold on. Paul looked at Mara. She looked back, understanding in her eyes. "I'll do it," Paul said. "No," Mara said. "You have a wife, a life waiting." "I'm alone." "You're not alone," Paul said. "But you're right. You understand it better than I do." Kalen placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. "You will not be forgotten. We will visit. We will speak your name." Mara nodded. She turned to the light. "Show me how." The archive opened a path. She stepped inside. Above, the fleet felt the change. The time distortion ceased. The planet's pulse steadied. From orbit, engineers activated the combined resonance field. Human and Vathari energy merged into a single song, a lullaby of frequencies that wrapped around the world like a cradle. The seal held. Paul returned to the surface alone. He stood where New Haven once was, tears mixing with the gray dust. He looked up at the stars where 500,000 ships waited. Back on the Odyssey, Admiral Cruz received his report. She said nothing for a long time. Then she opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. "Today we did not win a war," she said. "We honored a promise. Remember New Haven. Remember Mara Ellis. And remember that sometimes the bravest thing is not to fight but to listen." In the core of the dead world, Mara sat within the light, not as a prisoner but as a guardian. Around her, the faces of lost worlds slept peacefully, and for the first time in eons, the archive dreamed without fear. The fleet did not return home as conquerors. It returned as witnesses. 500,000 ships turned away from the gray world that had once been New Haven. Their weapons never fired in anger, their mission complete not through destruction, but through understanding. In the days that followed, the human and Vathari vessels drifted side by side, sharing data, repairing each other's hulls, and speaking in the quiet language of shared loss. There were no parades planned, no victory speeches, only silence heavy with respect. Commander Paul Grant stood on the observation deck of the Aurora's edge, watching the last Vathari ship fold space and vanish. He held a small data chip in his hand, the final message Mara had sent before stepping into the archive. It contained no words, only a single image, a child's hand holding a tomato, just like the one Mayor Carl Dawson's daughter had grown in New Haven's garden. Paul kept it in his pocket, a quick reminder that some things are worth protecting, even if they can never be brought back. Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes addressed the world from the steps of the Unity Hall in Geneva. Rain fell again, soft and steady, as if the sky remembered New Haven too. He spoke not of enemies or empires, but of responsibility. We went to the edge of darkness, he said, and found not monsters but mirrors. We saw what happens when memory is hoarded instead of shared, when fear speaks louder than curiosity. Mara Ellis gave us a second chance. Let us not waste it. His words spread across every colony, every station, every ship still drifting in the outer systems. People gathered in public squares and mess halls and quiet homes and listened. For the first time in generations, humanity did not ask what it could take from the stars, but what it could give. Admiral Lena Cruz retired shortly after the fleet's return. She declined all honors, all medals. Instead, she took a small post at the new Institute for Cosmic Memory on Luna, where she helped design a global archive, not to store data, but to teach remembrance. She often visited the memorial garden planted in New Haven's honor, where real tomatoes now grew under Earth's sun, tended by volunteers who never knew the colony but honored its name. Paul Grant was offered command of the entire Outer Rim Defense Fleet. He turned it down. Instead, he accepted a role as Earth's first ambassador to the Vathari conquered. His first act was to travel to their homeworld, a place of shifting skies and singing stones, and plant a single seed from Earth soil. The Vathari watched in silence, then joined him, placing their own seeds beside it. From that day, the garden grew, fed by two worlds. The Vathari, once solitary guardians of forgotten graves, began to open their archives. They shared stories of civilizations long erased, not as warnings but as lessons. Human historians worked with them to rebuild lost languages, lost songs, lost recipes, tiny pieces of lives that had vanished from time. In classrooms across Earth and its colonies, children learned not just human history, but the histories of those who came before. Even if no one had remembered them for 10,000 years, the archive beneath New Haven remained quiet. Scans showed it stable, its pulse slow and steady. Every solstice, a joint human Vathari vessel would visit not to monitor, but to speak. They would broadcast stories, new ones from Earth, from Mars, from distant outposts, so Mara would know the world still turned, still dreamed, still grew. She never replied, but the archive's light would brighten slightly as if smiling. Years passed. Colonies expanded, but with new rules. No world would be settled without deep geological and temporal scans. No drill would pierce the crust without checking for ancient seals. Humanity had learned that the universe was not empty. It was layered with memory, with grief, with things that should not be disturbed lightly. Paul married again, not out of forgetting, but out of living. His wife, a botanist named Elena, helped design the first memorial forest on Proxima b, trees grown from seeds of every lost colony, real or erased. Their daughter, named Mara, often asked about the woman she was named for. Paul would sit with her under the stars and tell her not of war, but of courage, the kind that chooses to stay so others may go. The Conquered of Remembered Worlds was founded on the anniversary of New Haven's fall. It had no army, no borders, no laws beyond one: remember and be kind. Its council included humans, Vathari, and eventually other species who had also lost worlds to time or tragedy. They met not in grand chambers but in quiet gardens, sharing tea and stories under open skies. Back on the gray planet, The dust still covered everything. But if one stood very still at dawn, they might see a faint shimmer near the old colony site, a ripple in the air, like heat rising from stone. Some said it was the archive breathing, others said it was Mara, watching over the world she saved. No one knew for sure, but everyone who visited left something behind, a flower, a note, a song hummed into the wind. Humanity's fleet never gathered in such numbers again. 500,000 ships had been a response to silence, but now the silence had been answered not with fire but with a voice, and that voice, once raised in mourning, now spoke in hope. The stars did not tremble anymore. They listened. And in the quiet between them, two civilizations walked forward, not as survivors but as keepers of memory, guardians of the past, and builders of a future where no one had to be erased to be remembered.